Welcome back to Southern Life. On today's video, we're going to look at ICE and immigration arrest in the state of Florida. U.S. citizen from Ohio was arrested in Sarasota by her probation officer from the Department of Corrections for, listen to this, delivering drugs to a minor. The craziest thing is, when I look up her coordinates, I don't go Uber driving back there anymore because it's a common thing for you to have minors in that little neighborhood using the Uber to transport drugs blatantly. That should just give you an idea of the type of problem that we have in this metropolitan area where people are using minors to run drug operations. I'm not saying those were the specific details of her case, but in this little neighborhood I've had circumstances where I pick up somebody. It's an adult putting the minor into a vehicle with some type of storyline about why they need to do that. No Uber passenger gives you a storyline. It's none of my business what you're doing. They think they're smart, but they're not really that smart. They're actually pretty freaking obvious. They think that by using a minor to make these operations, it draws less law enforcement attention, but in reality, it isn't. Their stupidity shines through brilliantly. I mean, go figure. I'm not a cop. I'm not a neighbor across the street. I'm an Uber driver that works the entire metropolitan area, and when I see a ride ping out of this neighborhood, in my mind, I can already see somebody putting a shout into a vehicle to transport drugs. It's just what happens in this neighborhood. Now, she was booked into the Sarasota County Jail, but she does have a Manatee County address. This is all taking place in the Bradenton area. 30-year-old woman in Sarasota, Mexican national, was arrested for possession of Colombia. She is not listed as a U.S. citizen. It doesn't exactly mean she's undocumented. She could be here on a student visa. She could be a permanent resident. But if you are not a U.S. citizen and you are arrested for a possession charge, you will most likely see a deportation order. She lists her occupation as being a house cleaner. I'm all for hardworking people coming over here, but if you're coming here to work, you can't also be involved in illicit activities. Most likely her time in Sarasota will be coming to an end soon. Many years ago, the people that did this type of occupation were older, more mature people that were undocumented. Today, a lot of them are on student visas and they're working or something like that. It's a younger crowd, a kind of more sophisticated, more hip, more in tune with what's going on in the world. These kids are a lot more propense to engage in criminal activities than their former undocumented counterparts, which had a better reputation, were harder working people. This U.S. citizen, her name is Melissa. Melissa is only 24 years old, but she was arrested by the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office for engaging in organized fraud, a warrant out of Highlands County. That's over in the Sebring area. You guys have no idea how much fraud and scamming is taking place in Florida. It seems that almost every single day I get a phone call or an email from somebody telling me the nightmare that they are living because somebody else is doing stuff like this to them. Just in the last 2 days, I had somebody reach out to me telling me that a fake LLC is making offers on their homes that they're trying to sell. I also had somebody else reach out to me via email telling me that their house just went into foreclosure, even though it's not into foreclosure. People like this young lady are destroying people's lives every single day, taking their properties, their money, their futures, and their dreams with them so that they can live a lavish lifestyle at the expense of other people. Is law enforcement doing enough to stop this? In some counties in Florida, the individuals who are doing this are friends and relatives to the same police officers who should in theory be investigating these cases. These people are using fake LLCs to buy affordable properties or maybe empty lots or something with fake checks. Then they resell the properties and bank the money. This is happening left and right in Florida. Law enforcement's doing nothing about it. These people aren't making press conferences warning people about the dangers of the things that are happening in Florida. They know that they can't scare people into buying in Florida because these things are happening, because they're already dealing with enough problems within the real estate market to also aggravate it by telling people the reality of the things people are doing in this freaking state right now. And then the people who are being victimized can't talk about it and warn the public because it's a legal battle they're facing, and their lawyers tell them that they can't talk about it on the internet, so it leaves people with no possibility of warning others about the same scam. It's a never-ending cycle of scam and fraud in Florida. It's absolutely disgusting what's happening here right now. Avid realtors who do their homework are unraveling situations like this on an almost monthly basis. If you hire a stupid realtor who doesn't know what the crap they're doing, you are going to get burned so freaking bad. The amount of scams, frauds, and entanglements that exist in the real estate world in the state of Florida right now, it's mind-blowing. The things people devise to hurt other people, steal their properties. It's terrifying right now to have real estate in Florida. It's not one or two different schemes. It's hundreds of them. And then they're vinculated with the council members. They're vinculated with the law enforcement. They're vinculated with the title companies. These people have a freaking mafia going after other people's properties to steal them, forcing you to sell your property when you don't want to. A lot of these things develop from legal hurdles within a family. A bunch of kids get into a dispute over inheritance, and in the process, they learn a trick or two from their lawyers. Then they systematically go out there and implement that same situation to dozens of other people who fall for the same trick. These are people who are systematically bleeding the life out of society. Many times the victims are elderly, and that's all they have to live on. This man is originally from Honduras. He's not a U.S. citizen, and he was arrested for a no valid driver's license. A significant percentage of people from Honduras who are detained with no valid driver's license will end up getting an ICE immigration hold within the 15 days after their arrest. That could easily be the case for this individual. Notice that despite being Honduran, he's white and of very light skin complexion. As racial profiling has become a bigger issue in the United States, many times the people that choose to immigrate to the United States now are those who can better fit the aesthetic profile and avoid police profiling. This man apparently lives in the Suitcase City part of Tampa and was commuting into Sarasota for work. You know, one thing I never really understood about driving without a valid driver's license is the notion that even if you have a valid driver's license, every 1 or 2 years you're going to get pulled over regardless. How long do these individuals think they're going to get away with this? And keep in mind that the average cost of coming into the United States illegally from Honduras right now varies from $8,000 to $15,000. So you're paying $8,000 to $15,000 to get smuggled over here to make $20,000 or $30,000 a year. Let's say you can make $60,000 a year, but your chances of being detained by law enforcement if you're driving without a valid driver's license, the mathematical equation seems like it's stacked against you no matter what. I really don't understand the mathematical logic behind being smuggled into the United States, paying $10,000, $20,000 to do that, and then trying to make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, knowing that if you get detained once by law enforcement, you could easily face deportation. It doesn't mathematically add up. The other thing is, you had $8,000 to $15,000 in Honduras to get smuggled over here. I live in the United States and I owe $8,000 to $15,000. I don't have it available right now. Real talk, I just got that notification from Bank of America when you go under $100, they send you a low balance warning. So how these guys are able to have in their home country enough money to get smuggled over here would almost suggest that they're probably better off in their home country than they are here, because I couldn't scrape up $20,000 right now, but these guys are scraping it up in their home country to get smuggled over here, and I'm over here and I don't have it. It really makes very little logic. I think a lot of people that immigrate illegally to the United States thinking that they're going to find a dream here of some sort. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you would hear success stories of people who came over here and built a fortune, but that's not happening right now in the United States. The American dream is long dead. Most people in Latin America right now own the property where they sleep every night. Most people in the United States right now are indebted to their freaking eyeballs like I am, and I didn't end up in this situation on purpose. This is the reality of the United States right now. It just doesn't add up. The working class people have to work more and more and get paid less and less. If you have a little piece of property somewhere in Latin America and it's paid off, you are certainly better off than we are here in the United States. I would give anything to have 10, 15 acres somewhere where I could plant my own bananas and my own mangoes and get eggs for my own chickens versus being stuck here in the United States having to live this freaking nightmare every single day. The stress of life in this country is unreal right now. I'm working 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day. I don't get a day off. I don't get a break. All I do is work, work, work. These guys are in Latin America dancing and clubbing every weekend. We don't have time for that here in the United States. I'm watching YouTubers out of Haiti, Costa Rica, all these other countries, they're having family dinners on a Wednesday afternoon. We can't do that here in the United States. We are being enslaved to our freaking eyeballs. I don't really understand the notion of why somebody would leave a peaceful life with their family in Latin America and come here to be tormented by this economic system. And like I said, 10, 15 years ago, there was a time period where the American dream existed. I don't think that exists today. I think for most of us, it's become a freaking nightmare. We're seeing Americans go to Mexico, Ecuador, Costa Rica, trying to find another country where life is easier and more acceptable, more relaxing, less stressful, and less enslaved. And even as of recently, a lot of Americans that went to Mexico are starting to say that life in Mexico is becoming just as stressful and chaotic as life here in the United States. Yes, the economy in Mexico is booming now. It's improved tremendously, but it's almost become like the United States now, where cost of living versus cost of incomes don't add up. Many years ago, Mexico was a better place too. It's becoming impossible to live in Mexico right now. I Uber drive people from Latin America. I talk to Haitians. I talk to Mexicans, Peruvians, Dominicans, people who recently arrived from Cuba. And they're telling me that this isn't what they expected. This isn't the American dream they were thinking about in their home countries. A lot of them tell me if they knew that this was the reality of what they were getting into coming over here, that they would have easily stayed in their home country. A lot of people regret coming over here and actually anticipate getting deported so that their American nightmares can come to an end. The dream that they expected, because many years ago people did used to come to the United States and make a fortune and go back rich. That's not the case anymore. People who come to the United States now come over here to be disrespected. Cost of living doesn't make sense anymore. And on top of that, if they had stayed in their home countries, they were able to pile up more money over there than they ever were here. Again, these are individuals who paid $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to get smuggled over here. As of recently, Cuba allowed people to sell their houses. Part of the wave of people coming to the United States from Cuba is because the Cuban government finally allowed people to sell their houses. People sold their houses in Cuba that were paid off, got $20,000, paid $20,000 to get smuggled into the United States. Now they're finding that in the United States, they're not allowed to stay permanently. Now they're getting deported back to Cuba. And when they go back to Cuba, now they don't have the houses that they used to have when they were there. They sold their houses to come to the United States. That money went straight into the pockets of international crime syndicates, cartels, traffickers. Now those people are getting deported back to their home country with nothing. They should have never sold their properties in Cuba. When we came from Cuba in the 1990s, the government kept 5 of our houses. You know what it is to give up 5 houses that are paid off in your home country to come over here to the United States and pay rent? The Cubans that came recently, they sold those houses. The same houses that the Cuban government took from people like my family, these individuals sold those houses and used that money to come over here in a speedboat through a cartel network to come here to the United States now, thinking that they're going to get the same legal status as us Cubans who are real exiles and who actually suffered, lost properties. You're not the same. We lost properties. We were against the Cuban regime. My father did 5 years in prison. Do you think a Cuban exile like my family who went to prison in Cuba, lost houses to the Cuban government, somebody that came from Cuba yesterday sold the same houses to the, used that money to pay the cartel and come over here in a speedboat? Those people don't have the same rights to be in this country as we do. I was only 6 years old, but I remember getting off that plane in Miami and I looked at the person behind me and I said, close that door. There's enough Cubans over here already. As soon as I took my foot off the aluminum of the airplane and stepped foot on the concrete of an airport in Miami, I looked at the Cubans that were still on that plane and said, enough is enough. And from the time that I first saw a white woman in the Louisville International Airport in 1996, I told my family, I'm going to marry a white woman. I'm not going to marry none of these flea-bitten, lice-bitten Cubans that got off this plane with me. The first day that I came back from kindergarten and learned my first word in English, I told my parents in English, Spike English, you're in America. I told my parents I'm not going to eat no rice and beans. I want a Pizza Hut. I want some Domino's. I want some McDonald's. You better go get my Happy Meal. Don't be trying to feed me no beans and rice. And don't put your hands on me. This ain't Cuba. You think you'll be hitting me and disciplining me like you used to in Cuba? Nah, man. You put your hands on me, I'm going to call the ICE and deportation on all of you Cubans. I'm an American, son. You know, my parents, when I was a little kid, my parents were trying to hit me. I said, you in America now. You can't hit me. I'm going to hit you. And I can't get locked up because I'm a juvenile, baby. Yeah, baby. I'm from the United States of America, son. Man, I got carried away. What was this video about anyways? Oh, yeah. I'm Cuban, but you can't treat me like you treat all these other Cubans. I'm like a Ricky Ricardo type of Cuban. Mr. Donaldson, a U.S. citizen from Orlando, came to the Sarasota area. Listen to what this guy did. Robbery with a firearm and a mask. Robbery, carjacking with a mask. Kidnapping. He's got 3 kidnapping charges. And of course, he also has charges for using a deadly weapon in a robbery. This individual is the 4th carjacking that we have had in this area over the last few weeks. Carjackings in Florida were something rare that you barely ever saw. It's becoming a normal day-to-day thing for you to turn on the news and hear about a carjacking here in Florida. It's becoming normal. And you know where they're getting it from? I bet you this guy spent his entire childhood playing video games that depicted carjackings. These are people who played video games their entire life and decided to act out exactly what they did in those video games. You have an entire generation of people that grew up playing video games where they were doing carjackings. And guess what they're doing now in real life? Exactly what their brains were programmed to do since they were young. This was just yesterday in Sarasota. Last week, we had another similar carjacking down there in Port Charlotte, I think it was. At least the guy down there was deportable. What are we going to do with this guy? We can't get rid of him. This Cuban guy was arrested in Sarasota a few weeks ago for a strangulation and kidnapping type charge. They just came back and hit him with 9 criminal enhancements. None of these are real charges. These are called criminal enhancements. They're doing Cubans in Florida now the way they do black people in Alabama, by giving them criminal enhancements and throwing them underneath the building. I don't know which sheriff's wives this guy slept with for them to be so angry at him, but these 9 criminal charges are all criminal enhancements. None of these are real things that he did. These are just criminal enhancements. They're trying to throw the book at him and put him underneath the building. Like I said, I don't know what police officer's wife this guy slept with for them to be this angry at him, but they're giving him 9 criminal enhancements. He already had his charges for what he did. Now they're coming back and throwing extra enhancements at this guy. Here in Sarasota, they're trying to bury Cubans underneath the building. When they're catching Cubans committing crimes, they find enhancements. This is kind of what they do in LaBelle when they catch a black guy and they say he was near 1,000 feet of a church, or Arcadia does this too, where like if they catch a black person selling drugs, they say he was within 1,000 feet of a school. These are criminal enhancements that are used to profile. We did a video recently where a white guy in Bradenton was 1,000 feet from a church without possession, and they didn't give him the criminal enhancement. But if it's a black guy, they give it to him. They're giving Cubans criminal enhancements in Florida. They're trying to throw us underneath the building. These white women go crazy when they see a Cuban. They grew up watching Rick Ricardo, and that's what they want when they grow up. They want a Cuban, but many times they're married to a police officer, and if you mess around with her, then they come and lock you up like this guy right here. Like I said, I don't know what this guy did to these police officers in Sarasota that they want to put him this bad underneath the building, but they just went back with 9 criminal enhancements. When law enforcement agencies start to pull criminal enhancements out the book to try to put people underneath the building, you know that now their intention is to work outside of due process. Now they're intentionally trying to bury people. Again, his crime would have already put him on a long trip. Kidnapping, strangulation, whatever he did to this person. Hopefully it wasn't a white woman. Gosh, she'd be screwed then. But whatever this guy did, hopefully it wasn't a white woman, because that would have been the icing on the cake. But whatever this guy did, I don't know what he did. Some type of strangulation thing he was charged with. Whatever the crap this guy did, if he was a U.S. citizen, he'd be going to jail for a very long time. If he was a resident, he would most likely get deported. The issue with Cubans is unless they have a certain number of criminal charges, Cuba won't accept them. So maybe this guy was a permanent resident. He probably wasn't here illegally. They want to get him deported. So now they're giving him all these criminal enhancements. And once it's enough for the Cuban government to say, okay, this is a serious criminal, we have to take him back, then they accept him. But none of this is going to go to trial if they're trying to get this guy deported. Again, I don't know what their intentions are, but it is suspicious that all of a sudden they come back with 9 criminal enhancements on this guy. Criminal enhancements are not really real charges. When you see criminal enhancements, it's just law enforcement trying to push their weight around, trying to bury somebody underneath the building that they want buried. But they're not doing it to carjackers. They're not doing it to people selling drugs to minors. They're doing it to Cubans who choke a white woman out. So far, I haven't raised any red flags about any of the things that are happening in the Sarasota area. Most of these idiots dig their own hole. In the case of this guy, if he's choking people out, he dug his own hole in a sense as well. But when you start to see law enforcement pulling out criminal enhancements, they don't do this in this county. People in this county don't get criminal enhancements. These are not the law enforcement practices that exist in Sarasota. When you start to see Mississippi, Alabama, LaBelle, and Arcadia type of police tactics in your community, you better be afraid. Because now it's law enforcement trying to push their weight around, trying to bury people underneath the building because they want that. See, that's the thing about law enforcement. Your job is to arrest people. The courts decide the rest of that crap. So stop pulling out criminal enhancements on people. Now, don't get me wrong. This guy wasn't driving around with the wrong tags or no valid driver's license. He committed a serious crime. But this is the person you're dedicating effort to put underneath the building? Why? I'm going to guess it's Cubans. Now, Cubans, before this whole immigration thing, made up a small percentage of the arrests. You didn't even see a single Cuban get arrested in Sarasota before this new immigration thing. Now, not only are Cubans being arrested more often, they're being arrested for more serious crimes, but then they're also hitting them with criminal enhancements, something that is practically unheard of in this metropolitan area. Now we're starting to see a wave of fraud. We're starting to see a wave of carjackings. I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I would rather see law enforcement throw the book at those types of criminals and not people that they want to get deported. After all, if he was not legally in the United States, just that kidnapping charge enough to get him deported. But why are they going with so many criminal enhancements after this guy? Why don't they dedicate more time to throw people that are carjacking underneath the bus? That's my question right there, because out of all these criminals here, when I look through all these crimes, I see people pushing drugs at minors. That's terrifying. I see people doing carjackings armed with a mask. That's absolutely terrifying. Those are the types of people you should be throwing the book at. Now, with the Sarasota Police Department, every time we see something suspicious, we pull the body cam footage, we examine it, and law enforcement behavior is always justified. The problem is that the sheriff's office involved in this particular arrest, they don't have body cam footage. You can't get a Freedom of Information Act request from those people. They do whatever they want. And this is, again, the type of thing that I've been trying to tell you guys on my videos, is that the Freedom of Information Act is a practical joke in the United States. The agencies like the Sarasota Police Department, you can pull anything they want. You're not going to catch them doing anything wrong. It's the agencies that don't have body cam footage. You can't get the Freedom of Information Act requests for those types of things because they're not even recording them to begin with. I'm not defending this criminal. What he did was horrible. And what he did would probably be enough to get him deported either way. So why they're going out of their way to find all these different types of enhancements at this guy? And keep in mind, a year or two ago, you didn't see Cubans getting arrested in Sarasota. Now, all of a sudden, with all this immigration thing, they're finding more Cubans doing horrible things. But the reality is, fraud and dangerous types of crimes are on the rise in this area. It hasn't got as bad as Orlando or Tampa or nothing like that, but it's working its way up there. I Uber drive in this area at night, and over the last year, you're hearing gunshots more often. You're seeing people getting arrested left and right. You're seeing bars. You're seeing these crazy carjacking arrests. Things have really got bad recently. Personally, I'm not a fan of criminal enhancements. I like to see people get arrested and charged with what they did, and that's it. Anything else gets sorted out in the courtroom. When you see the intent of law enforcement through criminal enhancements, it doesn't leave too much room for doubt, because once you see intent and motive, you already know how their actions are going to accordingly go with that. And that's a principle in law in the United States, by the way. Intention and motive precedes all things in law in the United States. When you see somebody getting criminal enhancements in a county where people don't get criminal enhancements, and why, if he has serious, listen to this, okay? If he's facing serious criminal charges like the ones that were placed on him, Why do you need minor criminal enhancements for a major crime? It doesn't make sense. It makes you question the legitimacy of the original charge to begin with. That's what Arcadia does. That's what LaBelle does. That's what Mississippi and Alabama do. I don't want to live in Mississippi or Alabama. I live in a beach town in Florida. I expect more from law enforcement. Why are you wasting resources charging somebody with enhancements when the guy's already facing kidnapping and strangulation charges and he's probably deportable? This is what you see in LaBelle and Arcadia, little hick towns where the cops do whatever the crap they want. Oh, and let's not forget this. Every single one of these enhancements is a no bond enhancement. So they're trying to hold on to him for as much as possible. So where do we see these types of things happen? Oh, I remember. Hey, you guys remember that video we did on Alabama where they caught the Venezuelan lady that was stealing cars and they gave her like 50 enhancements? That's an Alabama type of practice. See, this is Florida. We're not in Alabama. We don't do those type of things here. We do things the way they're supposed to be done. And this is what aggravates me sometimes about these immigration arrests. Do things the way they're supposed to be done. There's a legal framework in place that works. You can deport people if they kidnap somebody. So why do you have to go and do these Alabama type things, giving criminal enhancements in a county where criminal enhancements practically don't exist in their legal system? Just do things the way you're supposed to. It doesn't draw suspicion from the public, and it promotes trust and confidence in what you're doing. When you start to do Alabama and Mississippi type crap, people start wondering, what the crap are you guys doing? There's a legal framework in place. Whatever crime this guy did, the legal system, you have to have faith in the legal system and that it's going to work and function. If you don't, then you start to see motive and intention from the part of people pressing the charges. It creates doubt in the legal system. And hey, I'm not a lawyer, but I got kicked out of high school in the 9th grade. I got my what do you call that thing? My STD over there at the Manatee Technical College in Bradenton. You know what I'm saying? I got my high school EPOTA down there at the Manatee Technical Coolidge. You feel me, dawg? If an idiot like me can figure out something's wrong, I know you got smart lawyers and judges and people up in that courtroom that have a little bit more intelligence and education than me to figure out that this is a mispronunciation. This situation is a Haitian misinformation, manipulation, mispronunciation. You feel me, dawg? Now, this Cuban should be innocent until proven guilty of all the people he's kidnapped and choked out. And now you aggravating him, dawg. He might just pop out with you, man. Now, already when they originally locked him up, they put a hold on him for a victim GPS. I've never seen that in Sarasota County. So again, practices we haven't seen before. He did have a $200,000 bail. That's a lot of money for a Uber driving with a fake account looking type of Cuban over here. He's already sitting here looking at a $200,000 bail. He's already sitting here looking at some weird GPS hole that I've never seen anybody in Sarasota get. So his original charges were aggravated assault with intent to commit a felony, battery by committing strangulation. Okay, my wife does that to me just about every other day. Domestic battery by strangulation. Kidnapping and false imprisonment. Now that is a very serious charge. That charge by itself should be enough for law enforcement to conclude whatever they need to prosecute this individual thoroughly. Battery, touching or striking. So this seems like a domestic type of nature thing. Now, could there be some horrific details in the background? We don't know. Most likely. I would just like to know what the intention of law enforcement is with giving this guy so many criminal enhancements. Because at the end of the day, that guy that did the armed carjacking with all that other crap, there was no bond on all these charges. But for some reason or another, the 4 charges that this guy had, he could have made bond. And I think the real fear of law enforcement is that this guy is going to bond out and then he's going to be able to flee the country and they won't be able to prosecute him. But the issue is, that doesn't give you the right to give him a bunch of enhancements with no bonds. If those charges pertain to his case, you would have hit him with it off the whip. But now you're doing it now because you realize he might be able to bond out with a $200,000. And that's the real problem with this case. It's the fact that they're getting him with enhancements for things that are trivial. And what is their motive and the intention? I believe it's because he's Cuban. And this is the problem that we're seeing now. That now we're starting to see a malignant intent from law enforcement when it comes to the handling of individuals who they perceive are not U.S. citizens. And that is concerning because once you have a malignant intention, it should just give you an idea of how they're going to start treating people. We want due process. In the case of his charges, they're serious enough to deport him. But, and again, it's just disappointing to see law enforcement go to these extents to go after somebody, and you can start to denote their intention. It isn't good. Now, I'm an Uber driver in this metropolitan area. I see it all. Human trafficking, children being used to traffic drugs. The things that you see in this metropolitan area that are not difficult to detect, they're systematic exploitations of people, and they do nothing about it. But then, watch how much effort they put into trying to get a Cuban not to bail out of jail. If they have nothing to do, it's understandable, but there's a lot of work to do in this area. It's kind of like, you know, all the homeless, we've pulled, 4 body cam footage of homeless arrests. Have you noticed how they all happen between like 4 and 6 in the morning? Why is that? Because that's the only time of the night where nothing's going on, so then they go and arrest a few homeless people to get their quotas. Okay, fair game, right? There's nothing else going on. Focus on some trivial crap. But then you're putting all these law enforcement resources into trying to go after an individual who already is facing serious criminal charges, and you have to have faith that the courts are going to do their job. But this guy's not even a U.S. citizen, and they're worried about him having $200,000 to bail out of jail. And as horrible as his charges are, they do seem to be of a domestic nature underneath his own roof that he's paying for. And if you're concerned about him having $200,000 to bail out of jail, you probably assume they're not living too bad. After all, he is living in Venice. He's not living in a trailer park in Arcadia. Like the guy in the comments section being glad these people are being deported. But you know what the issue is? He's not a U.S. citizen, and he's living in a gated community. This guy's got a lot of money, and it bothers them that he's going to be able to bail out. He's not supposed to be living in this gated community with a lake and terracotta roofs and big palm trees outside. He's not a U.S. citizen, and he's living in a very wealthy area. Beautiful community. And they are afraid that he's going to be able to bail out. As a Cuban, they don't want a Cuban living like that. You know what the real problem here is? Envy and jealousy. The cops that arrested this Cuban, they can't afford to live in the gated community where this guy was at. The prosecutors and all these people, they live in the United States, they speak English, they work for law enforcement, and then they have to go arrest a Cuban that lives in a gated community that doesn't speak English, and it bothers them. Where this guy messed up is the community that he's living in. When you are Hispanic, you cannot live in these rich communities, in these Gulf gated communities. They don't want you to have that. If you can afford it, pretend you can't afford it. Because the moment that you are a Cuban, you don't speak English, you're not a U.S. citizen, and now you're getting arrested at your house by police officers, and they don't speak English, and they get jealous of your house, they get jealous of your cars and the jet ski in the driveway, they're going to make your life miserable. Because you're being arrested by a cop who hates you, they're racist, and now they're jealous that you don't speak English and you live in a gated community with a jet ski and a boat in the driveway, and they can't afford to live like that, and it bothers them. The real problem, if this Cuban had been living in a trailer park here in Sarasota, none of these enhancements would have happened. I'm realizing now, I did a little bit more research on this situation. You got to see where this guy's living. He's not a U.S. citizen, and he's living grand. Beautiful home, terracotta roofs, palm trees. When you're getting arrested by cops who live in a freaking a little apartment over here, and you're living across the street in the gated community with the golf course, they can't have that. And that might have been this guy's fatal mistake, is that the people that arrested him are jealous that despite the fact he's not a U.S. citizen and doesn't even speak English, he's living in a gated community. It bothers them that he has that kind of money. This is something that I learned living in Alabama, is that if you are Hispanic, you can't be living better than the cops that are coming to arrest you. They can't stand that. If there's one thing that you do not want to do as a minority, is to live better than the cops that are coming to arrest you. When they come to your house and they see that you're living better than them, it bothers them because they feel that you're not entitled to have it. And many times you are, because you worked for it. Maybe this guy is a freaking genius. Maybe he came over here, made a bunch of money. He's smart. He's living good. He's in a gated community. He's not even a U.S. citizen yet, and he's probably already a millionaire. And that bothers these cops that have to go out there for $22 an hour. So when they see a Cuban living better than them, it absolutely bothers them. I learned that in Alabama. Don't look like you have more money than you do. And if you have it, learn how to hide it, because these people are jealous. Jealousy is a huge thing, but when you combine jealousy with racism and the power that law enforcement officers have, it's a recipe for your life to get destroyed. If this homie was living that type of criminal lifestyle, he should have been living out in Spring Hill on 20 acres where the cops couldn't see what he was doing. He's living in a gated community in Venice with a lake out back and beautiful terracotta roofs and palm trees. You can't be living like that when the cops are knocking on your door over some domestic situation. I tell Hispanic people all the time, if you get white people money, don't live in a white people neighborhood. Buy yourself a house out in the woods where they can't see it, or build yourself a palace in the middle of the ghetto. Don't go live in white people neighborhoods if you don't match white people profiles, because even the people next door, they don't want to see you living like that, bro. Now that I dig a little bit deeper into this case, I can kind of understand what this guy's problem is. And the problem is that the cops that arrested him can't afford to live the way he's living. So imagine that. I mean, he dug his own grave right there, bro. I tell Cubans all the time, if you got white people money, don't live like you got white people money. You got racist cops that are getting paid practically nothing. They're racist and they got power. And on top of that, they're having to arrest you, a Cuban who doesn't even speak English, and you're living in a freaking palace. You think it's not going to bother them? You think they're not going to try to dig you in a hole? You're combining power, racism with jealousy. These people are going to ruin your freaking life. A lot of these Mexicans are smart. Mexicans are so smart. Mexicans will never move into a white community like this. You'll see Mexicans and they got all types of stuff going on. They're still in that little trailer in the hood, man. They don't move from there. The problem with these Cubans is that they want to go live in the white people community. They want to live next to the white people, and those white people don't want to see you living like that. I wouldn't doubt that if a white person living next door to him had done the same crime, he might have not even got arrested. That's the problem. When you got money, you can't go live in a gated golf course community with them white people because they don't want you there. They hate you in poverty. Imagine if they hate to see you in a work truck living in a trailer. Imagine how much more they hate you when you live in a gated community in Venice. The homie's out of line. He should have known that these white people were going to screw him up. This is what happens when you put yourself around people that don't want to see you be successful. I'm looking at this case now and it all makes sense. I've unraveled the problem. This guy doesn't speak English and he's living in a gated community in Venice. His neighbors don't want him there. The cops don't want him there. If a white guy has choked out his wife on the front lawn in that same neighborhood, most likely he would have never even got arrested, okay? But because he's a Cuban living in this gated community, all them white people don't want him there. You can't live next door to these rich, racist white people because they don't want to see you there. We're living in a segregated country, and you can't be a black guy on the plantation because they're not going to allow that. There's black people now that go and buy the plantations in Mississippi and Alabama. They don't want you to own that. If you have it, play it cool like the Mexicans do, bro. You'll see the Mexicans living in a trailer, driving a nice little Toyota or something. And you're like, they're poor. Now the Mexicans are millionaires, but they're smart. They know how to play the game. Peep the game, take notes, and learn, because things in this country are complicated. Jealousy is a poisonous thing. People do not want to see you living better than them. You have to be careful what type of neighborhood. The best thing for me has been living in an apartment. You know why? And there's people in my apartments that are Haitians that work at McDonald's, and there's rich people that live here as well. Nobody cares about nothing because we're all renters. The moment you move into a place where it's you own the property, you instantly start having problems. They want to find out, how do you get this money? How do you drive this truck? I see it on Uber every day, bro. I'm on Uber. I got a very expensive pickup truck. Every passenger that gets in, how do you drive this truck? How do you afford this truck? What's your job? You see me driving Uber right now. Oh, yeah, but you can't pay for this truck Uber driving. Maybe I can. Mind your own business. I didn't ask. When I pull up to some rich people, you think me as an Uber driver, I'm going to pick up a guy that lives in a $20 million house on the beach and ask him how he got $20 million? I don't care. I don't want to live in some rich white people neighborhood with some snobby Karens across the street. I want to live in an apartment complex that's mixed and diverse. All I'm saying is jealousy is poisonous. People are always, it's not that they want what you have. It's that they don't want you to have it. The problem with this guy's case, I can look at it now, is the fact that he's living in a gated community in Venice. His neighbors don't want him there. His neighbors, when the cops came up, I'm sure, you can't pull body cam footage, but I'm sure the neighbors were involved in this one. They don't want you there. They want to bury you. So you can't just go over here and move to a gated community with some red brick pavers if you barely speak English, bro. Like, he dug himself into this one. In the back of my mind, I'm looking at this case. I'm thinking this guy lives in Northport or something. Now I see where he lives, and there you go. That's the problem. These people, it bothers them that you're surviving. How do you think a police officer getting paid like an Uber driver's salary is going to feel when he's arresting a Cuban that lives in a gated community? Like, the homie needs to wisen up. They're going to bury this guy. Matter of fact, if you look at this case, you can tell that they're worried that he's got the $200,000. It's a $200,000 bail. It's a $200,000 bail, and they're still giving him enhancements because they think he's going to come up with the $200,000. Wrap your head around that. It's really sad to see these Alabama and Mississippi practices taking place here. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. A lot of us get jealous of other people. A lot of us are racist, so we have to contend with that. That's why I don't own property. I'm indebted to my eyeballs. I'm okay with the whole notion because I know that the moment that I have something, they're racist and they're jealous. If you have something to go after, they're going to go after it. Like all these people, they have this gold card thing now where if you have $5 million, you can buy your U.S. citizenship. Those people are lining themselves up for the biggest mistake of their lifetime. If I had millions of dollars, the last thing I would want to do is bring them here to the United States where they could tax the life out of it and bleed the life out of it. Like, how much is $5 million going to last you in the United States? Whatever country you're from, that money will do you more in that country. You'll be able to grow it faster. You'll have it taxed less. You'll have it regulated less. You would have to be stupid, but that's the idea. They want to sell you the dream so they can kick it from underneath you. This whole gold card thing where if you've got millions of dollars, you can buy your U.S. citizenship. It's the last thing on earth you should do. Imagine now that these people hate immigrants. They're trying to get rid of immigrants. And you're going to come over here like, I bought a green card. Yeah, you're getting rid of all of them. But I'm better and richer than you. Really? What do you think the outcome of that scenario is going to be? If they have a problem with the ones that are cutting the grass and installing roofs, what type of outcome do you think you're going to have as a millionaire when they're trying to get rid of immigrants? And how peep the game, take notes. And this has nothing to do, if you're a white person, just listen carefully too. People don't want to see you living good. People don't want to see you having crap. You're better off being slick about it. Now, I'm the type of person, I like nice things. If I could afford a Lamborghini, I wouldn't even think twice about it. It'd be on the driveway. It's not about the fact that you can or can't afford it. It's not about the fact what people think. It's not about their perception. I don't give a crap what the next person thinks. It's about the type of harm the other people are willing to inflict upon you if they get jealous about what you have. It ain't that they don't want you to have it. It's that it bothers them that you have it. It's not about the thing that they want. It's about you. You can't have it. Man, I've been studying this guy's case, scratching my head, wondering, what is the problem here? I tell you what the problem is. He's living in a gated community. That's the problem. You can't flaunt in front of these people. If you have it, you gotta pretend you don't have it.